My beloved friend, I see you there this Thursday morning, phone in hand before you've even had your first sip of coffee. I see the way your heart sinks as you scroll through the highlight reels of others, comparing your behind-the-scenes reality to their carefully curated performances. I see the discouragement creeping in, the voice whispering that everyone else has figured out life while you're still stumbling through the basics. But I need you to understand something profound this Thursday morning. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are not failing. You are simply reading your story wrong, comparing your rough draft to someone else's published novel, your chapter 3 to their chapter 20. Let me tell you about Sarah, because her story will help you understand why comparison is not just unhelpful, it's spiritually dangerous to your calling and purpose. Every Thursday morning for 2 years, Sarah would wake up with hope and go to bed with despair. The pattern was always the same: coffee, social media, instant depression. She was 32, working a job that paid the bills but didn't fulfill her soul, living in a cramped apartment while dreaming of starting her own business. Her Instagram feed was a parade of success stories that made her question everything about her life choices. College friends buying houses, former coworkers getting promoted, acquaintances launching successful businesses, people younger than her achieving everything she'd been working toward for years. What's wrong with me? Sarah would ask herself every Thursday morning. Why is everyone else winning at life while I can't even figure out what I want to do when I grow up? But Sarah was making a critical error in judgment. She was comparing her internal experience, full of doubts, struggles, setbacks, and uncertainty, to other people's external presentations, carefully filtered, strategically shared, highlighting only victories and milestones. What Sarah didn't know about her friend who bought the dream house? She had lived in her car for 6 months 2 years earlier, working 3 jobs to save for a down payment, crying herself to sleep in parking lots while building the credit and savings needed for that purchase. What Sarah didn't know about the colleague who got the big promotion? He had been passed over 4 times, dealt with severe anxiety attacks, and spent 2 years in therapy learning to believe in himself again after a devastating performance review nearly ended his career. What Sarah didn't know about the acquaintance who launched the successful business? She had failed at 3 previous ventures, filed bankruptcy once, and spent her last $500 on business cards while living on ramen noodles and prayer. Sarah was comparing her chapter 3, still learning, still growing, still figuring things out, to their chapter 20, the victory lap, the celebration, the harvest season that comes after years of planting, watering, and waiting. Scripture teaches us in 2 Corinthians 10:12 that when they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are not wise. This isn't just practical advice, it's spiritual truth about how God designed us to live. Comparison isn't just foolish, it's a form of spiritual warfare against God's perfect timing and unique plan for your life. Think about the heroes of faith and how their stories would look if we judged them by their chapter 3. Abraham at 75 was still childless, wandering in a foreign land, waiting for promises that seemed increasingly impossible. If Abraham had social media, he would have seen younger men with growing families and established businesses and wondered why God was taking so long to fulfill his word. But Abraham's chapter 3 of waiting was preparing him for chapter 20 of becoming the father of nations. Moses, at 40, was a murderer in exile, tending sheep in the wilderness, probably thinking his best years were behind him. If Moses could see other leaders making their mark in their 20s and 30s, he might have concluded he'd missed his shot. But Moses' chapter 3 of obscurity was preparing him for chapter 20 of leading millions out of slavery. David, as a teenager, was overlooked by his own family, considered so insignificant that his father didn't even think to include him when the prophet came looking for the next king. If David had social media, he would have seen his older brothers in positions of respect and influence while he was stuck in the fields with sheep. But David's chapter 3 of being overlooked was preparing him for chapter 20 of being remembered as the greatest king in Israel's history. Joseph at 17 had big dreams and bigger problems. Betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, thrown into prison. For 13 years, it looked like God had forgotten his promises. If Joseph had social media, he would have seen his brothers prospering in business while he was languishing in an Egyptian dungeon. But Joseph's chapter 3 of betrayal and imprisonment was preparing him for chapter 20 of saving nations from famine. Do you see the pattern, my friend? Every hero of faith had a chapter 3 that looked like failure, delay, or being forgotten. Every single one faced a season where their circumstances contradicted God's promises, where other people seemed to be progressing while they were stuck or even moving backwards. But here's what they understood that we often miss. God's timing is not about your comfort, it's about your preparation. God's delays are not about his forgetfulness, they're about his thoroughness. God's plan is not about making you look good in chapter 3. It's about making you effective in chapter 20. This Thursday morning, I want you to understand 3 profound truths that will set you free from the comparison trap. First truth, you don't see the full story. When you scroll through social media or observe others' lives from the outside, you're seeing their highlight reel, not their behind-the-scenes footage. You see the promotion announcement, not the rejection letters. You see the wedding photos, not the years of loneliness and bad dates. You see the business launch, not the failed attempts and sleepless nights of worry. Everyone you're comparing yourself to has struggled with something you know nothing about. Everyone you think has it figured out has wrestled with doubts, fears, and failures you never see. Everyone who looks successful in your eyes has a story of perseverance, setbacks, and small beginnings that would surprise you. The colleague who got the promotion, she was laid off 2 years ago and spent months battling depression before finding this opportunity. The friend who bought the house, he lived with roommates until age 35, saving every penny while watching friends get married and start families. The entrepreneur you admire, she started her business at age 50 after a divorce left her starting over from scratch. You're comparing your internal experience to other people's external presentation. You know all your struggles, doubts, and imperfections because you live with them every day. But you only know others' victories, celebrations, and carefully curated moments because that's what people share. Second truth, your timeline is perfect for your purpose. God has given you a unique calling that requires unique preparation. Your journey looks different from others because your destination is different from theirs. Your timeline seems slow because you don't understand how God is preparing you for what He has planned. Maybe you think you're behind because you're 30 and still single while friends are married with children. But God might be preparing you for a ministry to single adults, or developing your character for a marriage that will impact thousands, or giving you experiences that will make you a better parent when your time comes. Maybe you think you're behind because you're 40 and just starting your dream career, while others established themselves years ago. But God might be giving you life experience and wisdom that will make you more effective than if you had started younger, or preparing you to mentor others who feel like late bloomers. Maybe you think you're behind because you're struggling financially while others seem prosperous. But God might be teaching you dependence on Him that will protect you from the pride that often comes with early success, or developing compassion that will help you serve those in need. Your chapter 3 is not evidence that you're behind. It's evidence that God is preparing you for something that requires exactly the experiences you're having right now. Third truth, comparison is spiritual warfare. When you compare yourself to others and feel discouraged about your progress, you're not just having a bad day, you're under spiritual attack. The enemy of your soul knows that comparison is one of the most effective ways to steal your joy, kill your confidence, and destroy your sense of purpose. Satan doesn't need to make you commit terrible sins to derail your calling. He just needs to convince you that you're behind, forgotten, or not good enough. He needs to get you so focused on other people's chapters that you stop writing your own. When you're discouraged about your timeline, you stop taking risks. When you're jealous of others' success, you lose sight of your own vision. When you're convinced you're behind, you give up on dreams that might be just around the corner. But here's what I want you to remember this Thursday morning. God has not forgotten you. God has not abandoned you. God has not made a mistake with your timeline. You are exactly where you need to be for God to accomplish what He wants to accomplish through your life.